Good morning, everyone. Kris here with Inspired Energy. Joining me is Hartwell. Good morning, Hartwell.
Good morning, Kris. Good morning, everyone.
Yes. So we're exploring different aspects of human design, and the one that you've chosen this week is to look for prosperity in the body graph. And by body graph, you mean the graph that people get when they get a human design reading, correct?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. So we haven't touched on this before. We've touched on a lot of things, but can you tell us what human design has to tell us about being successful and how to manifest?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, we want to say, well, what do you mean by success? Because people can define that in various ways. So, I mean, we're just going to go with a no-brainer way. Most times when people talk about success, they talk about being successful in their career and making money. So that's what we're going to look at today. Not being successful in relationships, not being successful in your spiritual quest, but being successful
Specifically in prosperity and money.
The measurement of the material world, yes. So, I mean, if you've been following along, you know, well, type has to be involved on at least some level. You know, so the how to be successful is going to come back to following your decision-making process, whatever that happens to be, based upon your type. So decision-making is about, part of it is a strategy that arises from type, whether that's to respond or to wait for the invitation or to act upon your own inner impulse. So that's the beginning, because remember, if you're in alignment with your design, then you are going to meet the right people, you're going to enter into the right environments, and you're going to meet with the right opportunities.
So, yeah, but also like our strategy and authority is part of it, but there's also different gates and channels and stuff that affect us as well. Like I remember you saying that I have the gate of yes. So, you know, I'm not supposed to like do things right away. Give it 24 hours, think about it. Don't make the decision on the emotional wave, right? We talked about that sort of thing. So, oh, bless you. So,
Thank you.
it's like everything else, there's layers to it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, human design tells us that most of us live in the not self, and there's plenty of people being successful in the way that society defines success, being in their not self. But here we're here to say what does what can human design tell us or show us?
So is it like, can it show us what we're meant to do as a career, or like what we should pursue as a career?
Not often. I mean, for instance, say you have the channel of the wavelength, the design of talent. It's going to indicate that it's part of your design to be very talented, but it's not going to tell us, is that going to be at playing the piano, or is that going to be at being a classical musician? Oh, that's kind of the same thing.
I thought you were going to say class clown.
Yeah, you know, a stand-up comedian, you know, whatever. You know, the channel of the wavelength is all about skill-based talent. You know, it's writing or martial arts or classical musician or anything that takes a great deal of repetition, and that repetition eventually arises as a form of talent that transcends simply the repetition. So it's going to say, you're talented. Find the thing that lights you up, and you could potentially be, you know, a genius level talent at that, but it's not going to tell us which one.
Yeah, but it's your strategy and authority that's going to help you find out which one.
Right.
Yeah.
We always want to know the answer before we're in the right place in our life to live the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it reminds me of one of our mentors that's, talks about if you got everything, you wouldn't have you wouldn't be able to contain it. Like if God gave you everything right away, you're meant to, evolve and pick it up as you go, and then you're being up
Mm,
leveled and going up the ladder so that when you do get blessed at the end, you have the skill set to do that, right? Yeah.
right,
Mhm.
right. So, yes, if you look at the defined channels in your chart, that is a place to start because these are going to show up in your life powerfully.
Mhm.
Um, whether you're living a non-self life or living an aligned life, they're going to show up powerfully. It's kind of like eagles have sharp beaks and powerful talons. It's just part of your equipment. So your equipment is what is defined, and what's defined is representing your auric field, and your auric field is how you attract or how you interact with the flow of reality.
Mhm.
So that's one thing to look at.
So,
Another thing to look at is all the third lines in your chart,
mhm.
because the third lines, so what I mean by that is look at your chart, take it out, and look at all of the activations you have that are in the third line. And the third line represents the material way. And so it also represents trial and error. So these are clues to where you're likely to be most prosperous, because any activation you have in the third line is expressive, creative, versatile, adaptable.
Mhm.
And there's a strong link sometimes between those third lines and your prosperity.
Oh.
So as an example,
Mhm.
I have only one third line in my chart, and it's called the gate of insight. And I mean, whatever I've done, and when I feel most like myself, it's on some level about delivering insights to people,
Mhm.
and that's my only third line.
Mhm.
So
I
it's
have
like,
lots.
pardon me.
I said I have lots.
You do.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us about one or two or three.
Well, I don't have my chart in front of me, so
You
probably not.
you have six of them.
Yeah.
So, for instance, you have the gate of fighting in the third line, gate 38. Do you have
Mhm.
anything to say about that?
Not
Do you have a
really.
gift for if do
Uh,
you have a gift for being purposeful?
well, it's more like when there is a purpose behind doing something, right? Then you get inspired to continue doing the work that you do. Like, as far as I know, like it's more like an initiation, right?
So, I mean, what you might not be aware of is that your way of talking about this might be different than other people's. So
Hmm.
it's like so you're feeling, what I heard you say is that when you find a purpose or in something, you feel a kind of an initiatory energy.
Hmm.
Okay.
It's like,
Um,
yeah, it's like a drive to continue. It's almost a perseverance type thing. Like if there's a purpose at the end of it, then you have a reason to keep going. It's like, what's your why, right?
so just to be clear for our viewers, you're speaking an impersonal language, but this is
Hmm.
really your reality.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. How about gate 63, which is the gate of doubt?
That one's continual. Like my brain just doesn't shut off. It's like constantly, okay, that doesn't work. Let me find another way. Let me, like, it just, my brain just is continually working like that. It's always looking for everything that could go wrong so that I can make it go right. It's
Yeah.
like all of the pitfalls. So it gets very exhausting.
And has that shown up somehow as, has that helped you in your career world, your career?
Oh, well, it helps me in my career because then I can prevent things from happening that would create problems, right?
Uh-huh. What about gate 40?
That's the aloneness.
Gate of aloneness, yes.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, the talent for working, for being a hard worker, and doing what you need to do for the sake of your family, and being
yeah,
part of a team.
that is my life. That, I mean, when I had kids and they were small, I mean, that was all consuming. It was everything for the kids, like, getting up early, making everything just right so that there wouldn't be any problems, there wouldn't be any fights, there wouldn't be, any hiccups. So, I mean, I can see where all of that played out in my life. The same with work and career. It's like, okay, so I'm here at 8 in the morning. We don't open till 12, but I'm looking and doing all the things that I need to do that I can't do when I'm working at the front, right? Kind of thing.
So that incredible perseverance has been one of the things that's probably been most notable about you in
Yeah,
your career.
right. And then as well as the part where when you're in the shadow side to the point of exhaustion and making yourself sick, right? I've lived that. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, thank you, Kris, for sharing that. I mean, you have more third lines than I do. So, if, look in your chart to where your third lines are and think about how that's operating in your career.
Yeah. So are there other places that we would look in the chart?
Yes. One thing is to look at the areas in your chart that are undefined, the undefined centers. As we've learned in our series of classes, our attention is drawn to those places where we're undefined. This is where we explore. This is where the world is brand new and unknown, and it draws our attention. We explore there. We're curious about it. We seek, and we often become wise and discerning in those areas. And there's sometimes that becomes the source of our career. So, for instance, one of my spiritual teachers in my life was Yogi Bhajan. And he was a man from India who came over to the Western Hemisphere. And, when he was in his late 40s, and he started teaching yoga. And eventually he became very famous for that. And a whole yogic movement, the Kundalini yoga movement, sprung up around him. Now, in his chart, he has 7 out of 9 defined.
Mm-hmm.
But the centers he doesn't have defined are the spleen, which is about the immune system, survival awareness, instinct, and intuition. And he didn't have the head at the very top defined. And what was he known for? He was known for being a yogi, which is all about the spleen, because it's about our physical reality and how to be physically well. And it's about spiritual insights that he was delivering, about Sikhism and about yoga. And that is the center of inspiration, which is at the very top.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what he investigated. That's what he was interested in. That's what he had a lot to say about. Even though it was undefined, that's where he explored things. So it's quite intriguing. You can get some hints about what would be the best. It's interesting to me, for instance, Kris, that you've done a lot of Toastmasters training.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you have an undefined throat.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I don't know if you'd say that speaking is a large part of your career, but it is something that drew you to develop, a lot of skill with.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. It's about having the confidence to speak, right, in front of large groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
Or even, like one on one when they're coming in. But I think that the experience of having the undefined throat um, and feeling like people aren't hearing you or listening to you, right, um, is a really big insight. So when you're speaking to a large group of people with an undefined throat, I then have, voices to borrow, right? So, yeah.
But it's one of the things we often see in people is that their career evolves out of their traumas.
Hmm.
For instance, the person who is unfortunately the victim of a lot of childhood abuse, who
Hmm.
becomes a healer.
Hmm.
So some of our undefined centers can be where we have been hurt, but they can also be a place where we seek healing.
Right. And then that healing and that wisdom is what we impart on the world as our gift.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing that I would look to is all of the activations of your chart deserve some attention.
Hmm.
So especially look at some of the activations in your undefined centers, um, as a clue to what you might be drawn to or good at for career. So for instance, in my case, I have gate 18 in my undefined spleen. Gate 18 is called the gate of correction. It's all about being critical, seeing what doesn't work. Um, and there's definitely a part of what I do in the world that is seeing what doesn't work in different systems and
Hmm.
seeing what does work. So it's kind of like this critical mindset, even though that's not in a defined center. That's part of the flavor that I impart to people.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, one of yours, Kris, would be the gate 48, the gate of depth, which
Hmm.
is all about finding solutions to things because you have an instinct to be able to see the deeper underlying logical framework.
Hmm. A bigger picture.
Yes.
Hmm.
Or another example might be for me, I have gate 3, which is called the gate of ordering, which is part of the channel of mutation. And it's like, even though it's in my undefined sacral, I am constantly interested in systems that are about transformation, bringing order out of chaos, finding the right path forward that is going to be mutational or transformational.
Hmm. Yeah.
So these, all of the activations in your chart become ingredients in the recipe for your own success.
Hmm.
So
It's
the
all about
idea
playing.
is, pardon?
It's all about playing with your design and figuring out where the best place is to focus your energy.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's kind of like you've got a piano in front of you, and certain notes work and certain notes don't.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you kind of get used to your instrument, and then you learn how to play it.
Hmm.
So it's all about respecting, loving, and being grateful for your own design,
Hmm.
and approaching your life from the clear understanding that no mistakes have ever been made
Yeah.
in your creation.
That's a nice way to wrap it up. is is there anything else that you want to say as we wrap things up here?
I would say if you've been drawn to listen to these things, and are intrigued by it, please stop by. And if you haven't got a professional reading, get a professional reading, so that you can You can meet yourself in a way through human design, and that can really shift things for you.
Mm-hmm.
There are other things related to human design that are very powerful, like the gene keys. These are tools that actually, mm, feel into your response to it. But if you have a response to it, it could very well be something that could be significantly powerful for you.
Yeah, exactly. So you also have some courses that you have online. So if anybody's interested in astrology or human design and diving in and knowing the basics, you can contact us here at Clair-i-tea or come in and we'd be happy to direct you to those classes. And I think that's about it for today. We do have a Gypsy Carnival happening this Sunday. If you're curious about little 10-minute readings, just to dip your foot in and find out what each of them are. Maybe you might even just want to find out what your chart is and in human design. So tickets are $88 and you get 4 10-minute readings, and you can get those tickets online in Eventbrite or through us here at the store. So with that, we'll say goodbye, good luck, have a beautiful day, and God bless.